The AllStar app, the #1 app in the business. UFC, Bellator, One Championship, PFL, and more. Get the app right now. Link in description. All right, Jack. Man, a hectic couple of years, man. I remember the first time we did interview. It was like right before the pandemic, actually, or the pandemic was hitting when you fought
Yeah,
Diego.
yeah, exactly. That was spot on. Exactly
Yeah,
there.
and it's a trip, man. Like how far you have gone and in such a crazy, turbulent like couple of years. Third round TKO, ground and pound finish, man, on Contender Series, wins you the contract. You only had 30 seconds left on the clock. Could that
Yeah.
fight have gone any better, man?
100%. I think if you watch my interview after the fight, I was out the back and I was shattered. Like I thought I'd done really poorly. Um, and my coaches were kind of like, "What are you talking about? You did really well." But I think I just, maybe, you have your fights where you're sort of in the flow state and in the zone. And I'd had sort of that 3 fights in a row and hadn't had one where I'd sort of needed to, struggle through it a little bit. And maybe grind out a win a little bit as opposed to just being on. So I think I was hoping to have that kind of moment where I was just in the zone, everything worked for me, and it didn't. I made like a lot of mistakes watching back that fight, but also it was probably one of my worst days, and still managed to get a third round TKO over a guy who was 8-1 and had been knocking people out. So it's good.
Has there been other fights in the past where you felt like you really did shitty and then you look back at it and you're like, that's not too bad. The coaches were, actually impressed.
No, I think that's what my good thing. A bit of evolution there is like the other ones where I felt in this fight were the couple of fights that I'd lost, where I felt it's not so much about performance; it's more how you feel, like how much I remember about the fight and how present I am. I find that if I sort of lose presence in the fight and I think about anything else outside of like really what's happening in front of you, I get really disappointed in myself. And there was times even in that fight there, I was telling my coach last night, like at the end of the first round, I just didn't think I was getting enough work off on top. And I remember thinking to myself, oh no, you're going to win this fight, but you're fucking not going to get a contract. And then I'm like, hang on, don't think about that. You've still got 2 rounds. Uh, but yeah, it was a bad night for me and I still managed to get the job done. So I'm happy with that.
Fuck, man, you had some like inner battles right in the middle of the fight, dude. There's a lot of
100%.
pressure, right?
Yeah. 100%. So much pressure. I've never felt, and Jimmy Crute talked me through that. I'm really glad I spoke to him about that. He said you won't have had a fight with that much pressure, and he said, and you won't get another one with that much pressure for a long time after. Because for our whole careers before this fight, winning is enough, and you go home and you're happy with the win, and you build off that. And now for every fight after this, winning is enough. You go home and you take your win and you're happy with it. Whereas this one, it's such a rare scenario where it's not enough to win. Like you have to win impressively, and that plays on your head a lot. And I had some other shit. Everyone has shit going before fights, so I'm not complaining or anything. But I had some things that were out of my control, like a visa issue where I was flying. In the few days before I left to go to Vegas, I flew to Sydney to drop my passport off. They told me it wasn't going to be ready. I stayed for 3 nights. It still wasn't ready, so I flew back to Melbourne for a weekend. Then flew back to Sydney on the Monday, stayed another night, then flew out the Wednesday morning. So it was just like a lot of back and forth, and then I had a lot of trouble adjusting to the jet lag. I'm a really poor flyer, and I wanted to get out a couple of weeks in advance because I knew like I've traveled a bit before, and I'm not like my body doesn't handle it super well. And I slept in the 5 nights, so I was there for 5 nights before the fight. And in the 5 nights before the weigh-in, I probably slept an accumulative time of 5 hours. Probably had an hour a night,
Damn.
like in a lead up to the biggest fight of your life. So it was fucking brutal.
Did you
But
feel like any like your legs going out during the fight where you just
no, not so much that, because I did sleep the night after the weigh-in. Like after the weigh-in, it kind of you have a full belly again, and you find a way to get yourself to sleep, which I was okay with. And even out the back before the fight, like I felt perfect out the back. This is one of those things, like warming up on the pads and doing a little bit of sparring with my coach. I felt like, yeah, I'm in the zone. This is perfect. I felt just like I had for the last 2. And then there was just something between leaving the back and getting out there where it just didn't click. But that's what you train for. I remember Donald Cerrone talking about that a lot, and I took that to heart, which was, you train so that on your worst night it's enough. And that was what I showed, that on my worst night it was enough to get it done.
Yeah, you have build off this performance entering, your debut. It's gonna be
Yeah, sure.
it's
No,
gonna be
I'm so
exciting, huh?
so excited to go again too. Like, there's so many factors that now just get me really excited. Like,
Yeah.
Dana was like one trick pony, and everyone. I was reading a lot of comments, and people are like, one trick pony, hasn't he seen any of his last fights? Like, he's a kickboxer, and I was like, oh well, Dana only sees what he sees. But I actually spoke to Dana out the back, and he was really cool. Like, he wasn't negative about my performance at all. He was really, he was speaking with a lot of praise about how I dominated the top position and that sort of stuff. But I think he just has to make the case for, when you come on Contenders, don't be sitting on top, not getting work done. So I think that's why he said that.
Dana, he said it, right? Like himself, that he doesn't know anything about you except for
Yeah,
what's
yeah,
on the piece of paper. So you got to
yeah.
really show him
I'm,
like what's going
I'm
on.
lucky. I'm lucky Matt Maynard and Sean Shelby were sitting there going, yeah, this guy's actually a kickboxer. I don't know what he's doing.
Now, after the fight, did you finally go, check out the PI, the UFC
Yeah,
PI?
that was so sick. I think uh, they on the Contender Series, they kind of make it like, when you go into the army and everyone gets like white clothes, and it's like, you're not in the army yet, you're maggots, like you're not part of
Yeah.
us yet. They really make the Contender Series a little bit like that. Like, we all get, like, the gear we get, it's like it's shitty gear, like with just Contender Series printed on it, and like, you're not allowed to use the PI. We even our contracts and stuff, it's not a UFC contract with Contender Series. It's a completely separate entity. And I think that they make it really clear that it's like, hey, you're not one of us yet. You have to earn that right. But then once you do get that contract, it's like a complete 180. Like, the next day we went into the PI, and they're like, yo, Jack, great fight last night. And it was real weird for me because I walk in and Michael Chiesa and Dan Ige are there. And Michael Chiesa's like, yo, great fight, Jack. I had you picked. I thought you fought a really smart fight. You took away his weapons. And I was like, fuck, that's Michael Chiesa talking about one of my fights. And then I kind of had a little bit of a relationship with Dan Ige through my brother and a few other things. And Dan was like, yeah, you fought really well. Good job. And then Marcel, the head of the PI, came up and he's like, welcome, gave us the tour, showed us around. Forrest showed us around and stuff. So you go from being like, maggot, you're a Contender Series guy, you're not a UFC guy, straight away that you do a full 180, and it's like, welcome. And everyone's pretty cool there. So I loved it.
Yeah, it's like the shortest boot camp of your life, right?
Yeah,
That 15
exactly.
minutes.
15 minutes and you go on, 14 minutes and 30 seconds.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, because I remember I was in Singapore for Road to UFC, and I was checking out the Road to UFC gear. It is pretty shitty, man. Like the
Bro, I
stuff that
couldn't
they
believe
give
it. I
you.
was like, they give me like the shorts, and like, I always fight in the same shorts. Like, I don't know if it's an Australian thing or what, but I'd hate like the long board shorts. But I also hate the Valetudo shorts, like the skin ones. I like thigh length, mid thigh shorts. And I'm like, oh no, I want shorts. And the guy like looked at me almost like, you serious, mate? Like, you get board shorts or you get Valetudo? Like, don't. And I was like, oh, can I cut them? Can I take them to a tailor and get them cut? And he's like, no, because you'll cut the Contender Series shit off it. I'm like, fuck. So I'm wearing these like board shorts I hate. Like, fuck, this kind of shit sucks.
Now,
But
what
anyway,
are you doing now? You're out and about. You're enjoying, America. What's going on?
no, I'm in Australia. I'm back in Melbourne right now. It's
Oh, wow.
9:30 Tuesday morning, and it's funny because I just got my media schedule sent through like literally 30 seconds ago. It popped up on my screen. So we'll shout out Daniel Morsley. He must have fucked up my media schedule and told you the wrong day.
No, I think I've got it mixed up because I was,
Uh,
the Pacific time. But yeah, you're back in Australia, man. You get to see your family, you get to see your friends. Was it an emotional return, or was it like you got back from a business trip?
No, I think it was emotional over there because I had like probably the people who were most important to my career over there. Like, my dad was there, my brother who's helped me along, and both my coaches. So like, we kind of just had a moment out the back after the fights where it was like, fuck, so much work to get here, and now I finally get a chance to show everybody. But once I got back now, good to see my mum. My mum had a moment. My mum never watches my fights, and she just gets updates. And it's a pretty funny story that my dad texted her after the first round and said, Jack did really well. Then he texted her after the second round and said, yeah, he did really well. He probably got a 10-8 in that round. That was really good. And then somewhere between the start of the third and the end of the third, one of my mum's friends had texted her and said, oh my God, I don't know how you do this. There's so much blood. And my mum just fucking freaked out. And she like started crying, and she calls my sister. She's like, what happened? And my sister's like, no, it's not his blood. Don't worry. But yeah, it was good to get home and see mum. And yeah, now it's just, I'm back at training already. I was thinking about fighting again in December. I would have liked to have done that, but kind of got steered in the other direction to wait for the February card by the UFC. So probably going to do that.
Of course, man. Of course. You know, hometown, you know,
Yeah.
like home country. It's always better.
Yeah, that'll be cool to go over to Perth. Yeah, get a good long camp in, and I'll be able to, if I'm back training already, so I'll keep the weight down from this fight, get real fit, and then it probably, the fact that it's in February, I can afford to have a few days over Christmas and enjoy Christmas with the family, because I've been getting ready for fights for the last 3 Christmases, so I haven't really, I remember, I think I was telling you this the last time we did an interview, but it was like Christmas Day, and my uncle arrived, and I was in my shed on my air bike, like doing work, and he's like, mate, it's fucking Christmas, give it a rest. And I'm like, nah, can't give it a rest. So this Christmas I'll be able to give it a rest on Christmas Day and enjoy some time with the family, so that'll be good.
That is good, man. Spend some time with your mom. Hey, why would someone text your mom say that there's all this blood? Like,
that's wild. Why would somebody do that? Like, you think, and especially everyone knows that she doesn't watch the fights, like she's never wanted to watch it, so I don't know why somebody would do that, and especially not even say it's not my blood.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah,
there was a lot of blood though.
Yeah, of course, man, of course. Now you go back in the gym. You say you're training already. Some of the boys at Absolute, man, they got some fights coming up. So I guess that keeps you sharp, right?
Yeah, got some huge fights coming up. It's like there was a lot of things that went really well on this trip. Like Raja, we found out Raja's going to be fighting for the Hex belt, which is he deserves that belt so much. Like he's had a tough time getting opponents, and he had one of the toughest runs during COVID. Not being an Australian citizen, he didn't get any of the help or anything that we got from the government. So he had it real tough, and to see him, go out there and at least get his shot at fighting for that belt and putting his name up at the top of the division is going to be awesome. And it's really cool. He, when we were over in Vegas, he really hit it off with my striking coach, Andy Colgrave. So now he's coming out to my striking gym as well, and we're hitting pads together. So we're just like doubling up our time together. And seeing them work together is really cool. Like two people who I've learned so much off in the striking department. It's cool to see them working together now as well. But yeah, we got him, and then Khan. Khan's got a big fight coming up, and I think probably the first one you're gonna see anything come from is Joe Luciano. I think Joe's just taking himself back to Thailand to get some work in, because he's got some big fights coming up. And I think if he plays his cards right, he could be a chance to be on that February card too. I think the UFC are being a bit tough on, like, they want people only to go in through contenders, but I think he'll be first reserve if anyone pulls out at least.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to hit him up, man. I know Khan, I know Raja. I've known Raja for years now. Man, Raja, if you don't know, man, he got that spinning elbow. That's crazy, right?
I tell people this all the time, and like unashamedly, when I first moved to the gym and me and Raja would spar, I had a very side-on style, like moving left to right, and which plays right into someone who spins, right? And I reckon he would have finished me with elbows probably 50 times. And then now I've learned, and he's sort of shown me the way to avoid it, and I'm a bit more aware of it. But he catches people with that stuff so easily. But yeah, he's a superstar, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. And yeah, definitely talk to Joe Luciano. He's kind of gone under the radar a bit, but if you look at his amateur record through IMAFRA and stuff, there's guys now who are in the UFC doing well who Joey beat at IMAFRA when they were in the amateurs. So, he's got a real chance. He's got one loss on his record, and it's because his debut was on one championship.
Man, yeah, that's a hard debut right there.
Yeah, for sure. Are you at Bangtao now? Are you over there?
No, I'm back. I was there for 5-6 months. Now I'm back in Korea, but I'm gonna go back early next year to train more.
I think Joey's going to spend a little time at Bangtao over the next couple of months. So I was going to say, if you catch him there, like, he's a great dude. You'd really get along with him.
Oh, for sure, man. If I was there, I would love to run into him. Perth, man, UFC 284. I guess you're gonna wait for that. Are you a type of dude that studies the division carefully? Do you watch all the featherweight fights?
Yeah, pretty much all of them. Pretty much, yeah. I study, especially the top 15. Like I look to the top 15. I like to look to the top 15, and then I like to look down. Like it's easy to look up and be like, okay, Volko, Josh Emmett, Yair Rodriguez, like I got to get to those guys. I find it more motivating to look down and look like, all right, who are the guys underneath me who are fucking working their ass off to try and get to where I am? So I pay a lot of attention to the younger guys all around the world. Like I could probably tell you who the number one Korean featherweight is. I know there's a guy who I fought who's up there right now. I can tell you who the number one featherweights are in the UK and Ireland. So I pay a lot of attention to it. Not from like an animosity point of view or anything, just purely keep your finger on the pulse, find out who's who and where you're going.
For sure. Hey, any names that they've thrown at you?
Nah, they haven't thrown names yet. Apparently they're matching January now, so we'll find out soon enough for February. But maybe an American or something. I'd like to fight an American or a Brazilian or I don't know, someone from somewhere over there in that direction.
Yeah, you want them to fly over to your neck of the woods, right? Rather than you fly over to theirs.
Yeah, I reckon. Yeah, I'd like someone to fly over. Give me someone from the far East Coast, like New York or some shit. So they got to get to LA and then they got to get to Melbourne and then to Perth, just pushing shit uphill.
Hey, one last thing I want to get your thoughts on is this season on the Contender Series, they signed a teenager, right? And I think like that says a lot about the sport and where it's going. What do you think about the direction of the sport with that signing?
Yeah, it's huge. Like I don't know if I love the idea of kids that young, because you think about how much work he must have done as a child to get to this point. Like, and I don't know how much damage he's taken and that sort of stuff. I personally don't love the idea of young kids sparring hard when your brain's still developing and things like that. It's kind of like a do as I say, not as I do type thing as well, though. Like it's like, I don't like young kids drinking a heap of alcohol and stuff, but I drink alcohol. And then it's like, I don't like kids sparring, but I spar. But yeah, like it's good for the sport, and obviously people are really picking up on this. It's a global sport; it's huge. So, good on him and his team for getting there and things like that. I just hope that we're not sending kids to war in the gym and things like that, and they're gonna have to find out the price they'll pay for it down the track.
Definitely. Imagine being matched up against a teenager and you're like a 20-fight vet. Some people might look at that as a lose-lose situation, especially at the top of the game.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing, like, it's a lose-lose, but like for the teenager, like I just see like your window of success is really small in MMA, right? Like I prefer, like I know not everyone can take that path, but I like the Volko path of like do your work and then sort of enter the UFC right as you come up to your peak, and then get your work in, get your fights, be active during that time, and then retire when time is appropriate. Because if let's say he fights till he's let's say 30, he's got another 13 years, and 30's early in MMA time, he's only really going to have 2 or 3 years out of that 13 in his peak, and how much damage in between them. But he's a fighter and that's what he wants to do, so good on him.
Yeah, let's see what happens. He's gonna be a good like test for like to see like what happens when you enter the UFC at a young age. Jack Jenkins, man, thank you, man, so much. If you want to know more about Jack Jenkins, go in the descriptions and download the AllStar app. It's there for you free. Jack, appreciate the time, and definitely we'll be speaking before UFC Perth happens, man, when you get an opponent.
100%. As soon as I get an opponent, I'll reach out. Well, you'll find out before me. Probably you got your ear to the ground. Let me know when you know.
All right, man. Appreciate you.